Hi everyone, welcome back to The Mystic in the Woods. I'm Kate, and today we're going to do a real quick video on decks for connecting with masculine energy. So this is going to be a fairly short video because I only have a few decks, I think 5 decks in my collection that I think fit this description. I have a lot of decks that I think are very neutral in their energy that you could use to connect with either divine masculine or divine feminine or neither or both type of decks. But I had a viewer request in a previous video to share decks that really help you to connect with a masculine energy. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, I would also love to hear your recommendations for this because I am actively searching for a couple more decks that really hit this description. Because I personally, and you certainly don't have to do this, I personally tend to use specific decks in my collection to connect with very specific energies or very specific beings. And then I do have some general readers, but so I'm still looking for a couple more really good masculine decks. So anyway, if you have a good recommendation, throw it in the comments below. So let's start with, and side note, especially if you have mass market ones, because all 5 of these currently in my collection are indie decks, and a couple of them might even be out of print. I think these are all in print. Anyway, especially if you have mass market recommendations, because I would love to have a couple more of these, as well as to be able to recommend them, because I know that indie decks aren't always accessible for everybody. So let's start with this one. Okay, so this is the Darkness of Light Tarot. Now, this deck I have talked about on the channel before because it is absolutely one of my top tarot decks of all time. Here are the backings. I know that there have been a few printings of this. I will put the links for all these decks below if I can find them, or at least the creator websites. This is, for a very long time, this was the closest to a Rider-Waite-Smith deck that I worked with. And I don't think that any of these decks have to be used to connect with masculine energy. I don't think any deck has to be used any specific way. I tend to use this as one of my more neutral readers. I use this for everything. I love this deck. However, when I was looking at my collection for which decks do I have in my collection to connect with a masculine energy, I do think that this one fits that. I'm just curious to know how you would word masculine energy below, because I think we all have a slightly different definition of that. So anyway, this, as far as for me personally, a very general reading deck to connect with masculine energy in general, this is probably my personal top pick, especially because it's just super versatile. But it has this darker color palette. I love the art style. It's also a little bit, so here, for example, is the Page of Coins. It's more serious. A lot of the cards in this deck are depicted in their more serious capacity. I don't know. I love this deck. I really can't say enough good things about it, and I do think that this can very easily be used to connect with a masculine energy or masculine beings. Now, let's go ahead and do this one next. So, we'll do these. Not that you can see which decks I'm looking at. This is going to be a real casual video. Okay, so the next one is the newest deck in my collection. So this is, I can't remember how to pronounce this yet. Ephemer. This is the new deck by the creator of True Black. Both of these decks are on my list. Now, like I was saying, in my collection, when I am reaching for specific decks, it's usually to connect with specific beings. So Darkness of Light is the masculine deck on my list that I personally, again, you don't have to, would use as a general masculine energy, or to connect with any masculine being, or to connect with and understand my own masculine energy, would be this deck. Now, the True Black and this one are a little bit more specific, and then the final decks are even more specific. So the way that I have started to use these two, or I should say plan on, because I've just started studying this deck. This was a Kickstarter, is Divine Light, Divine Dark, masculine energy. For me, again, you don't have to read them like this. So I think I posted a video earlier this week or last week about deity work and shadow work, where I talked about divine light versus, I keep saying divine light versus divine dark. They're not like at war, divine dark and divine light energy, as two ends, opposite ends of the spectrum. And this deck still is in order because the majors are quite different in this deck. So for me, this deck, my plan for it is to use it to connect with masculine energy within the realm of divine light. So, masculine feeling ascended masters, masculine feeling angelic energy, these types of things. I'll probably do another whole video on light and dark energy because it's something I feel really, really strongly about, that light and dark are not synonyms for good and bad, okay? So this is my plan for this deck. And as I have just started to study it, I do feel it's going to fit that description for divine light energy, especially within divine light masculine energy. Now, my true black, I've had for a lot longer. This one I've had for a few years, I think. And I have always loved this deck. So same creator, I'll put their website below. I've always loved this deck from the moment that I got it. But I had a little bit of trouble connecting with it for a long time until I started to use it to connect with divine masculine, sacred masculine energy. I use this deck in two ways. One is to do, when I'm going to do readings that are divine masculine and divine feminine, so I'm kind of bringing both of those as separate but important aspects into a reading. And I use this as a primary deck for working with goetic infernals, fallen angels, demons. This deck feels like that energy to me of how I experience most of those types of beings, and I do tend to experience them in a more masculine way. So this is what I use this deck for. And this is where it really started to click for me. When either I'm working with goetic infernals for myself or with others, or when I'm doing a reading where I specifically want to understand masculine energy separate from feminine energy within a situation or a question or whatever. This is just how I use this deck. Now, this deck, for anybody who's wondering about the differences between these two decks, of course the artwork is different and they have the dark and the light themes. This cardstock on the new deck feels very almost identical to the true black, but it's not as stiff. This should be much easier to shuffle than the true black for anybody who has the true black and has found it difficult to shuffle. I find the true black difficult to shuffle. I don't care. I love it. It's a pricier deck for sure. It is also definitely worth having this deck in my collection instead of multiple lower priced decks. I do really have quite the soft spot for the true black tarot in my collection. So that's how I use that deck. So then the last two decks are, again, primarily for working with darker deities, goetic infernals, and stuff like that. Let's talk about this one. Let's talk about this one first. So this is the Shadow of Darkness Oracle. I did an unboxing of this. I have it on the channel that turned into a chatty video about choosing a deck for shadow work and dark versus light energy. This is not a deck whose artwork immediately speaks to me. Like, this is not my favorite artwork style. Absolutely nothing against the creator. It's not the kind of artwork that would generally speak to me personally. But I do find that the artwork goes really well with the keywords and the key phrases. And my intention for this deck was to use it specifically for shadow work, especially when I'm facilitating shadow work for somebody else, when I'm holding space and guiding somebody else through their shadow. And it has been perfect for that. Especially if we are working with the goetic infernals to navigate and heal the shadow. So this deck, while it is not my typical artwork, it has, to me, a very masculine feel, and I use it primarily for shadow work or for working with wounded darkness, wounded masculine energy. Just for me personally, again, how I use these decks does not need to be how you use these decks. So that is this. Did I even tell you guys the name? The Shadow of Darkness. So I will put this link below as well, by Syrian Shadow. I have had this for a few months, and I have been very happy with it. I really, so far, it is proving to be exactly what I was looking for and to fill the exact hole in my collection that I was hoping that it would. Okay, so the last deck on this list is also the most nichiest. While every other deck on my collection, I have told you how I use them. You can use any of those decks in a very specific or a more general way. This is the Oracle of Heaven and Hell, and this one to me feels like a far more specific deck. So the way that this deck works is that, here's the backing. I don't particularly love the backing, but it has black edges. Is that it has a Goetic Infernal / Demon and an Angel on each card, as well as their sigils, their names, and a key word. I don't know if you can see that. I'm not going to try to pronounce most of these because I can't. But here we have the sigil, the name, and then we have a keyword. And then this is the Goetic Infernal on the top, and then when you flip it over, you have the Angel. Well, they're reversible, so whichever one is the top when you pull. You know what I mean. They're reversible. Now, because as I've already explained to you, I tend to feel a more masculine energy from the Goetic Infernals, this deck, I decided to put it on the list. And even though it certainly has the angels, I don't work with angelic energy nearly as much. The deck itself does feel a little more masculine to me. And I could see using this deck to work with masculine energy. So let me just give you a little bit of an idea here. So again, I'm not going to try to say the name, but we've got the Angel on top, and that keyword is motivation. And then here we have the Goetic Infernal that says extreme opposites. Then here we have luxury on the top with the Goetic Infernal. And then here we have fertility and fruitfulness. And then here we have slavery with the Goetic Infernal, and with the Angel we have propagation of light. So there's a lot of interesting ways that you can work with this deck for sure. I don't honestly pull it out nearly as much as I thought that I would. But when I was looking through my collection, thinking about which decks do I have that I feel hold a more masculine energy, this one made the list. So even though, like I said, it's the most nichiest of all the decks on this list, I still felt that it fit the list. So those are the decks in my collection that I feel hold or speak to a more masculine energy. I do have lots of decks in my collection that have a very neutral energy, but I decided to leave those off the list as that was not the viewer request. I would love to know what decks you guys feel have a masculine energy associated with them, because I'm looking for a couple more. And if there's any deck here that you want me to talk more about or anything you want me to expand on, let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.